controversial scientific technique developed in the United States.
So we see some of the foreshadows of the end times, but what do we see? We see a world ruler, we see an image, and we see a beast, and we see 666.
If Dr. Frankenstein were a college researcher today, instead of a mad scientist in the 18th century, would he have been able to create his monster? Two UNM researchers studied that issue and came to some terrifying conclusions.
The legacy of Louis Posadas is that he's a CIA-created Frankenstein.
And we put ourselves in the mind of Victor Frankenstein.
We were assuming that his institution...
That Superman that Nietzsche talked about, he will be the man that they are waiting for, and all the world will wonder after the beast because of it.
This is a story of flesh and blood, paper and dream, past and present. Everything you see has been stitched together from the pages of books and from the ill-fitting remnants of lives lived, lies told, truths, half-truths, teardrops, a lover's heart, stolen body parts, and unreliable memories, just like Franken. Where did I get the idea for our book? If I had £1 for every time I've been asked that, well, where to begin? Yes. It was the summer of love, 1816. We were staying at the Villa Diodati by Lake Geneva. Shelley, Byron, Polidori, my pregnant stepsister Claire, my baby William, and myself, unmarried teenage mum and social leper, all under the constant scrutiny of 100 puritanical telescopes watching our every move, our every transgression. Or we may have been banished from polite society, but polite society couldn't get enough of us. Good God, what are they doing? Is that a baby? Whose is it? Oh, she has her mother's morals, all right. We didn't disappoint, and if we did, well, what the hell? They just made it up. I'm telling you, that's his sister. Is she pregnant? Who's the father? Oh, don't ask. Not the brother. Are there no depths to their depravity? Atheists, sodomites, Satanists, vegetarians. Everyone wanted a glimpse of our little workshop of filthy creation. But our story really begins one dark and stormy night. The daytime, actually, though you wouldn't know it. This was the year without summer. Temperatures plummeting, black skies, orange snow, crops failing, cocks crowing at noon, candlelight for lunch, and the thunderstorms apocalyptic. The locals probably blamed it on us and the goings-on in the SLIA, the sordid league of incest and atheism, as the British press liked to call us. But what it actually was a colossal volcanic eruption, thousands of miles away in the East Indies. We'd been stuck indoors for days, and there we were, a little bored, a little boozed up, a little sexed up. The air was thick with all of it, up to our eyes in new ideas, looking for new ground to break, new trees to shake, bursting at the seams with our lust for life, except poor Claire, who was bursting at the seams of her bodice with lust for Byron. She was obsessed with Byron. She wanted Byron to be obsessed with her. Well, she was carrying his child, for God's sake. But the only thing that Byron was obsessed with was, well, Byron. We argued passionately every hour of the day about every issue of the day. Atheism, Hinduism, transcendentalism, vegetarianism, Galvanism, and vitalism. What was the it that separated the living from the dead? Would it ever be possible to reanimate lifeless tissue? And if it ever were possible, would it ever be right? We read everything we could get our hands on. We came across a book of German horror stories, translated into French, of course. Phantasmagoria. Deliciously macabre spine-tinglers with titles like Le Chambre Noire, La Tête de Mort, L'Heure Fatale. We gorged ourselves. It was Byron's idea for us each to write a ghost story. And to get us in the mood, he did a very melodramatic recital of Samuel Coleridge's rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. Oh, I'd heard it before from Uncle Sam himself when I was a child. Hiding. Where was I hiding? Where do you think I was hiding? Where monsters fear to tread. Behind the sofa. Like one that on a lonesome road doth walk in fear and dread, turned round, walks on, and turns no more his head, because he knows a frightful fiend doth close behind him tread. It was all too much for my poor hysterical Shelley. I did love him, but oh my God, what a drama queen. Well, they all were. I suppose the absinthe and the laudanum probably didn't help. But anyway, he ended up having this terrifying and frankly weird vision about my breasts. Oh my God. You have eyes instead of nipples, Mary. They're staring at me, Mary. They're staring at me. And he ran out of the room screaming. Men. Well, don't they come up with the most peculiar things to frighten themselves? If it's not staring nipples, it's fanged vaginas and all their other castration nightmares. Whereas with women, with mothers, we spoke of ghosts and vampires, which excited Polidori, who created this debauched, aristocratic vampire, clearly based on Byron. He was probably flattered. We talked into the night. The witching hour had been and gone by before we retired to bed. I placed my head on my pillow, but I did not sleep.
You had a dream, Mary. Tell me about your dream.
It didn't feel like a dream. It felt like a recollection, the reliving of a moment.
And how did it make you feel?
I felt terrified.
You were terrified.
No. It was beyond terrifying.
When you wrote of that night, you said...
I said, if I would only contrive a story that would frighten my readers as I myself had been frightened that night. But really, I wouldn't wish that kind of fear on anyone.
You said you dreamed me that night, of what I would become.
No. No, I dreamed you to protect myself from the things that were truly frightening.
Was I not truly frightening?
You? Frightening? No. You were the light's relief. Radical Baxter family by my dad. Listen to this. My dear Baxter, I tremble for the trouble I may be bringing on you with this visit from my 14-year-old daughter Mary. Thanks, Dad. Can you believe that? I'm hoping that her stay with you will add greatly to the strength and worth of her character. God. William Godwin, the great radical. Yeah, right. My mum, no, not his new wife. My real mum, she'll be turning in her grave at what he's becoming. He's a cold-hearted paper radical. Well, I want a hot flesh and blood radical. I'm so miserable. And don't blame it on my being a teenager. Teenagers haven't been invented yet. I'm really not well. Look, I think it might be infected. What if it's leprosy? Or gangrene, or syphilis, or some other new flesh-eating disease that doesn't even have a name yet? This is 1812. We haven't found a cure for anything. It's just so itchy. Ugh. The doctors think I might be allergic to something. Yeah, like the whole of the 19th century. It's disgusting. I'm disgusting. And I've just started to get interested in boys. Sailing from the sea, manned by British sailors to take them across the sea. On the Western Ocean Passage, none with them can compare. But the smartest ship to make the trip, the Bellina, I declare. Look, it must be the sea air. The seagulls are circling the whaling fleet. Isabel Baxter says the men will be gone for months. She says the whole of Broughty Ferry will watch them set sail, Mary. Wives, daughters and sisters will wave goodbye to husbands, sons and brothers. Some might not come back. That's how it is here, Mary. The boys learn how to die, and the girls, we learn to say goodbye. Isabel says they're going to the Arctic, to unexplored regions, to lands of mist and snow. They're going to kill a sea monster. Isabel took me to an old abbey near Dundee. Oh, it's a magical place, Mary. It's where the devil sold this monk the recipe for whiskey, the water of life. Shall we have some, Mary? Just a dram. Maybe it'll make us live forever. Oh, imagine that, Mary. Imagine if you could live forever. Imagine if no one ever died, Mary. Isabel's teaching me the love songs of Robert Burns. They sound so much better in a Scottish voice. A fond kiss, and then we sever. A farewell, alas, forever. Oh, I love Burns, and I love these mountains. I love the bleakness, and I love Isabel Baxter. I think I'll ask her family to adopt me. Well, I'd make a good Scottish lassie, I would. I'd stravage around the Kintra like I'm Ellen in Walter Scott's Lady of the Lake, wooed by a dark, mysterious night. Or my mother wouldn't approve of female sentimentality like that at all. And neither do I, of course not a bit. But oh, to be wooed, just a little. Isabel insisted I bought this tartan dress before I left. Well, I wasn't sure. I mean, it's hardly the in thing in London. Oh, but Mary, did you not know that tartan was illegal here until not so long ago? Oh, aye. Only a real rebel would dare to wear it. Well, red rag to a bull. It's what I'm wearing when I first meet him. My hot-blooded radical. My dark, elfin knight, my Percy Bysshe Shelley. We both felt it. The spark of life. It's like my first time, and he's like, let's visit your mother's grave, and I'm like, oh, he's so nice, he's so hot, and he's like, let's just do it right here, and I'm like, what, on my mother's grave, behave? And he's like, yeah, and I'm like, oh my God, but I really want him, and he's like, come on Mary, let's just do it, and I'm like, yeah, but on my mother's grave, and he's like, it would be so far out, and I'm like, could we just take it slow, go back to your place, play some music or something? And he's like, my place? No way. And I'm like, why not? And he's like, my wife would kill me. And I'm like, did you just say your wife? And he's like, want to hear a poem? And I'm like, could we just wind back a bit? And he's like, I wrote it just for you. And I'm like, oh, wow. And he's like, nothing in this world is single. All things by a law divine in one another's beings mingle. Why not I with thine? And I'm like, oh yeah, let's mingle. And he's like, the sunlight claps the earth and the moonbeams kiss the sea. And I'm like, yeah, yes, yes, kiss me. Do you want to hear something I've written? And he's like, let's do another one of mine first. And I'm like, okay. And he's like shooting sonnets, rhyming couplets and terzarima, and I'm dreaming bliss, big soft beds, books, and I want to have your babies. And he's like, I can't believe I'm with Mary Wollstonecraft's daughter. And I'm like, yeah, well, can I read you something I've written? And he's like, let's do another one of mine first. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, you were created just for me. And I'm like, oh, he's so intense, he's so romantic. And he's like, even when you were a child, I imagined this moment. And I'm like, a little bit creepy. And he's like, imagine that moment, your mother and father naked and conjoined in carnal lust. Can you see it? Can you see it? And I'm like, my mum and dad shagging, I don't want to see it. And he's like, that spark of life, that was you. They created you for me. And I'm like, he's so weird, but I think I love him. And he's like, let's run away to Europe. And I'm like, oh, he's so hot. He's so not like the other boys. He's so mature. And he's like, let's just do it. And I'm like, yeah, let's just do it. And he's like, let's just do it. And I'm like, my dad'll kill me. And he's like, I love your dad. And I'm like, he's getting weird again, but I still love him. And he's like, if only we didn't have so many layers. And I'm like, he is so deep. And he's like, then we could get naked so much quicker. Oh, there's a reason we call it falling madly in love. Dear Dad, please talk to me. I'm sorry I'm pregnant at 16 and have run off with Shelley, even though he's still married to someone else who, by the way, is also pregnant. Your adoring daughter, Mary. Kiss, kiss. Dear Mary, I cannot have anything to do with you. You and Shelley have sullied our good name. Only today I heard someone refer to you as perambulator face. It's a matter of principle, Mary, and principles matter. Yours respectfully, Father. P.S. Please ask Shelley to lend me another 50 quid. My publishing company is going down the toilet again. My Shelley, you were so ahead of your time. Totally against monogamy, as was I, of course. You said marriage is a prison sentence for both men and women. Absolutely. 100%. My mother said the same. You believed in free love, as did I. I did. And so, when you began to make suggestions of other men I might like to, you know, I was all yes. Oh yes, of course, my love, of course. And why not? Why not? Why shouldn't you? You always had to push the boat. But sometimes, and I know this isn't very radical, all I really wanted was published. 1st of January, 1818. And look, written by a nun. Oh, that's me. I wrote it. Shh. Don't tell anyone. But I did. I did. And oh my God, the reviews. I know it's not all about me, but it kind of is, isn't it? Upon the whole, the work impresses us with a high idea of the author's original genius and happy power of expression. It is a novel of fascinating enjoyment, says Walter Scott. Congratulations to the anonymous author, who we all know is Mr. Percy Bysshe Shelley. The anonymously written Frankenstein is a wild and hideous tale. Frankenstein fatigues the feelings and gratuitously harasses the heart. It leaves the wearied reader, after a struggle between laughter and loathing, in doubt as to whether the head or the heart of the author be the most diseased. It flew off the shelves. conceive the horror of my secret toil. I dabbled among the dissecting rooms, the slaughterhouses, the unhallowed damps of the grave. I was driven forward by a restless, almost frantic impulse. In a solitary cell at the top of the stairs, where I kept my workshop of filthy creation, I collected the instruments of life about me, that I might infuse a spark of being into the lifeless thing that lay at my feet. Did I really write it? Did I really write it? Seriously? Because I chose to publish anonymously? What decent woman writer didn't? The Brontes? Jane Austen? You think I didn't write it because the main characters are all men? Or because it doesn't come across as a silly novel by a lady novelist, as George Eliot, who was a woman, by the way, once said? Is that it? Or because it doesn't happen to be about a fragile young lady in search of a husband, or a fragile young lady in search of a lost kitten, or a fragile young lady in search of a brain, or some other pink and fluffy childish thing? Well, I couldn't have written it because it's a man's book, because it's a book of ideas and questions about things that actually matter. How could an 18-year-old girl have written such a manly book? I mean, after all, it is a truth universally acknowledged that any writer in want of a serious novel must be in possession of a penis. Besides, I wasn't just any 18-year-old girl. I was the Shelley girl. I was the Godwin Wollstonecraft girl, born to be brilliant. If you'd seen my house, my childhood house, well, it wasn't a house, it was a salon. Salon Wollstonecraft. Everyone who's anyone is here. Or William Blake, poet, painter, and mystic. Uncle Sam, of course, Samuel Coleridge. And William Wordsworth, still wandering lonely. Henry Fuseli, the painter. Oh, and the young chap over there, off his head on opium. Thomas de Quincey. And talking of getting off your head, that is Humphrey Davy, chemist. Have you tried his laughing gas? It's brilliant. Jeremy Bentham, philosopher. Jeremy, I hear you're going to have yourself mummified and put on display. Will that be before or after you're dead? I know. I sound like a terrible name dropper, but that's how it was. My toddlerhood was spent tripping over the feet of the creme de la creme of poetry, painting, politics, publishing, philosophy, science, you name it. I was the Rockefeller of cultural capital. Little ears love big words, and little minds love big ideas. Nothing was unsuitable. If I didn't understand, well, then I wasn't ready to understand. And who needed an encyclopedia? If there was something I wanted to know, I just reached out and tapped the shoulder of the nearest genius, while trying to deal with their expectations of my genius. Most little children get dolls' houses and teddy bears for their birthdays. My dad had a mini lectern built for me. Now, you can lecture to my friends on subjects of your choice, Mary. Won't that be exciting? Today, learned men and women, I would like to talk to you about fear. Fear is part of our ancient lizard brain, and is experienced by all animals. There are 3 responses to fear: fight, flight, and freeze. Note, learned friends, how we respond in the same way whether the threat is real or pretend. However, there is a 4th response, peculiar to humans: fawning. That means you make friends with the thing that scares you. So, in answer to your question, yes, I wrote it. Well, they've adapted it for the stage. And did they ask my permission? Still, on the plus side, I'm famous. It's based on my book, Franken. Tonight's play, it's an adaptation of my book. Oh, it's starting. Ladies and gentlemen, the Theatre Royal on the Strand proudly present a new romance of a peculiar interest in 3 acts, written by that most excellent dramatist, Mr. Richard Brinsley Peake, and entitled Presumption, or The Fate of Frankenstein. Music, maestro! Act 1, Scene 1. A Gothic chamber in the house of Victor Frankenstein. Fritz, a servant, well, he's not in the book, but it's not a bad idea, is awoken from his slumber by strange noises coming from behind that door, the door which leads to his master's laboratory. Good evening, friends. I am Fritz. Herr Frankenstein's been up to his tricks. He's been hidden away for 2 weeks and a day. Oh, those underground sounds, oh, they give me tics. Hark! It's Elizabeth, Master's young sister. Oh, she's so fragrant, yet no one has kissed her. She's like a little French poodle or some nice apple strudel. What man in this world can resist her? Oh, I'm in love. I'm in love. I am smitten. Oh, my life is all puppies and kittens. All the things that I think are all fluffy and pink. Now her brain's like a frayed woolen mitten. Oh. Victor, my darling big brother. Oh, I fear he is under the weather. The spark in his eye is so dull it might die. His life seems devoid of all pleasure. Scene 2. Victor Frankenstein's subterranean laboratory. Cue the theremin. And the mad laughter. Such a moment needs lightning and thunder. I'm engaged in an unheard of wonder. Like Prometheus of old, who was daring and bold, I have made life from dead limbs torn asunder. I was a writer. Like my mother and father and Shelley, I was a writer. You were so new and exciting, and you felt so real and present. Half the time I couldn't say if I was sitting in my study writing you or walking the streets of Ingolstadt, being you, being Victor, being all of them. That time I spent imagining your life, I felt so alive in my own. That creative urge, that spark. This wasn't just writing about life. This was life. Did I spend too long creating imaginary lives? Was that it? Did I not pay enough attention to the living? Realize how fragile they all were? Because the living are so fragile.
Where did the story come from?
From inside my head.
Was the book in some way inspired, or at least coloured by
No.
your state of mind at the time of writing?
Who cares?
And by hysteria, or by the condition...
Condition? Would you ask a male writer these questions?
The condition we now call postpartum depression.
Would you reduce a man to a set of psychological conditions?
Severe parental alienation, or abandoned child syndrome, or maybe some severe psychoneurosis created by feelings of matricidal guilt.
Maybe it was because of all that. Maybe it was in spite of all that. Or maybe I was just incredibly fucking talented. It was 1 a.m. Rain pattered dismally against the window. My candle was nearly burnt out when, in the glimmer of the half-extinguished light, I saw the dull eye of the creature open. It breathed hard. A convulsive movement agitated its limbs. I looked at it. This miserable monster whom I had created. He lifted the curtains of the bed. His yellow eyes were fixed on me. His jaws opened, and he muttered something, some inarticulate sound, and then a grin wrinkled his cheeks. It was a grin, and his hands, they were stretched out towards me.
All men hate the wretched. They cannot bear to look upon them.
They pass by my house almost every day. From Newgate, public hanging, poor wretches. The pie sellers will be happy. And the pickpockets too, they'll be doing a roaring trade. There must be thousands today. Even the theatre doesn't get crowds like this. Of course, it's perfect family entertainment. It's got it all. Freaks, fear, big feelings. And you're always guaranteed the money shot.
Do they look afraid?
No. No, they look resigned, relieved even. The crowd will hate them for that.
Who will be there to mourn them?
Wife, husband, mother, brother, daughter, friends, no one, mostly no one. Oh, look. There's a man over there putting on a bit of a show, fighting for his life, looking absolutely terrified. Now, that's more like it. Give the public what they want.
What was his crime?
Who knows? Murder, treason, theft, bad luck, being born.
Tell me his name, the one who's terrified. Who is he?
They're all one big, wretched, nameless mass.
Tell me about him.
His name is George Foster. In London, you don't need an imagination. You just need eyes, ears, mouth, and nose. Walk 8 foot in any direction, and you'll come across every sort of horror show. So many workshops of filthy creation. George Foster drowned his wife and child in Paddington Canal. So they say. Others say it was suicide. It's neither here nor there. What you need to know is this. George Foster was a Christian. He believed without a shadow of doubt that the souls of those who had been dissected and dismembered could not pass through the gates of heaven on Judgment Day. And so, like any good Christian murderer, when George was standing in the dock, he was not praying, "Dear God, do not let the judge sentence me to be hanged by the neck until I am dead." Oh no. He was praying, "Dear God, do not let the judge sentence me to be dissected after I have been hung." For George, that would truly be a fate worse than death. But George's prayers were not answered. He was taken to Tyburn, the place of execution, and there he was hanged. And that is what became known as George Foster's first death. Within seconds of being pronounced dead, George was cut down from the gallows and taken to a specially prepared lecture theatre. For George Foster's would be no ordinary dissection. He would be experimented on by none other than Giovanni Aldini, the nephew of Luigi Galvani, who believed he had perfected a method for reanimating the dead with electricity. Picture this. 2 policemen, rigid with apprehension, stand either side of the dissecting table. Aldini attaches a number of electrodes to George Foster's face and body. The room is deathly silent, but not for long. when Aldini throws a switch, administering the first dose of electrical fluid, Foster's left eye opens wide, swivels wildly round the room, staring accusingly at his audience. Aldini throws a second switch, and the dead George Foster's chest heaves and seems to gasp for breath. Several onlookers faint with fright. Others mumble half-remembered prayers. Aldini throws a third switch. Foster's arm shoots sideways, taking out the first policeman. His leg shoots upwards, taking out the second. George Foster was alive, but not for long. The two policemen soon recovered, grabbed the revitalized Foster, and straightaway dragged him back to the gallows, where he was once again hung by the neck until he was dead. And yet again, his lifeless corpse was taken back to the laboratory, where Giovanni Aldini would once more resurrect him. Hang me from the gallows, hang me from the tree, hang me from the lamppost, 1, 2, 3. Hang me in the morning, hang me late at night. I will find your children and give them such a fright. Scary Mary. Everyone loves to be scared out of their wits. Sometimes.
Who's there?
All the ghosts.
Name them.
There are too many.
Name them. Tell me their stories.
Mama. My mother. Mary Wollstonecraft. I learned to read, tracing out the letters of your name on your gravestone. But who are you? I know your beliefs from the books you've written. But what about the books you didn't write? The books you should have written, the books you would have written if only I... It was upstairs, in your bedroom, our birthing room, the original workshop of filthy creation. The candlelight is flickering, picking out the whites of your eyes, casting a yellowish hue over them. If it was by Rembrandt, we'd say it was beautiful. The doctor's hands are filthy. How can he be so bloody stupid? Wash your hands, man! But nobody knows yet. Your breasts are so swollen, so painful. You need me, your newborn baby. You need me to feed from you. But your milk has been poisoned. They won't let me. They have to do something to draw off the poisoned milk. They've brought in 2 dogs, 2 puppies for you to suckle, one on each breast. They're yelping and wagging their tails, and oh my, what a picture. They should have painted that scene gold. That was a missed opportunity. All the men who'd held you in contempt, they'd have flocked to see it. What a treat, eh, chaps? Mary Wollstonecraft, the woman who wrote the vindication of the rights of women. The woman who reported from Paris at the height of the French Revolution, dying on a sodden mattress like a bitch with her litter. Who was it said, a baby fed on the milk of a lioness will grow up with extraordinary courage? What dogs might they have grown to be who drank the milk of Mary Wollstonecraft? If I could, I'd drink it now, poison and all. Footsteps, sodden footsteps. One drowned in the Gulf of Spezia, my love. Another dragged from the Serpentine, the other woman. The first, Mrs. Shelley. You were pregnant with his child, as was I. What does that make us? Some kind of... Why do you look at me like that? Of course, I was the other woman. Wilmouse, such a clever, mischievous little blue-eyed mouse. I think I'd better not send you to school. All the other little boys will be so jealous. They'll have no choice but to tease you. Clara Everina. Why on earth did I call you Clara like your sister before you? At least you stayed with me a while longer. Clara the First, Clara la Prima. How can such a little thing make so much noise? Baby Clara, tiny Clara, living proof of our love, or our shame, or our recklessness, or our something. But why, little one? Why were you in such a hurry to get here? And why did you have to leave so soon? The dream I had, the waking dream that dreamed you into being. It wasn't you I dreamt of. You were the light relief. I dreamt that my little baby came to life again. I dreamt that she had only been cold, and we rubbed her before the fire, and she lived. We rubbed her before the fire, and she lived. Please. Enough.
This is where our story started.
And finished.
I feel at home here.
It's comforting. Everything frozen. Preserved in ice.
Why must I live in a shadow world?
My shadow. It's why I created you.
Why must I perform the most despicable acts imaginable?
It's why I created you.
You have monsters in your world, but they do not look like me.
No. People prefer their monsters to look like monsters. It helps them sleep at night. Why did I write our book? Because we're all storytelling animals. Telling stories is what we do. This was a story that needed telling. Oh, I've lots of favorite bits and lots of happy memories of writing them. But if I had to choose, each and every time you implored your creator to listen to my tale, hear me, listen to me, I entreat you to hear me. Listen to me, thou canst but listen. I demand this from you. Hear my tale. It is long and strange. And you did. You told your story. And in the telling of it, you became human. And each and every time our stories told, we can feel it. The spark of life. It was on a dreary night in November that I beheld the accomplishment of my toil.